Welcome to our first bonus episode of the Aaron Werner podcast on iCode Media. Today we talk with Oromchi, our favorite HR and small business lawyer who specializes in optometry and medical and dental practices, about the new FTC ruling on non-competes and the Corporate Transparency Act. Lots of questions are coming in, lots of discussion about these two things, so I wanted to go to the expert. Please enjoy our conversation, share the conversation, leave us a 5-star review, let us know what you think. The Myopia Collective. CooperVision and the AOA have partnered in a groundbreaking initiative to change the way optometrists in the U.S. treat children with myopia. The purpose of the Myopia Collective is to rally the profession of optometry and its allies to interrupt the status quo and elevate the new standard of care for children with myopia. Every individual is encouraged to become a member of the collective. By joining, you commit to taking action to help slow the progression of myopia in children. You'll receive updates and information about the collective and its work in the fight against myopia, gain access to educational opportunities and resources offered by the collective, and hear from change agents, the ambassador optometrists selected to serve as advocates for community and policy change that facilitates the mission of the collective. Scan the QR code or click on the link in the show notes to join the collective today. In the past, our focus revolved around prescribing MacuHealth or MacuHealth Plus to patients at risk of macular degeneration, while also recommending it to collegiate and professional athletes for enhanced contrast sensitivity in sports performance. However, this year's introduction of the Life Meter has been a game changer. The Life Meter revealed a concerning truth. Many of my patients have alarmingly low skin carotenoid levels, indicating potential deficiencies in essential body tissues like the retina and brain. Supported by over 30 peer-reviewed publications, Life Meter's accuracy, consistency, and effectiveness has been demonstrated across 2,000 subjects with diverse backgrounds. With this newfound insight, I can now have meaningful conversations about carotenoid levels with all of my patients, even those who may seem outwardly healthy. To learn more about this empowering technology, feel free to contact your MacuHealth representative or click on the link in the show notes. Together, let's optimize patient care and elevate their well-being. All right, welcome to the Aaron Werner podcast on iCode Media. I've got my good friend, all of our good friend, Oromchi, and I've invited him on because there's been some things that have popped up recently in the business law world, and want to get his guidance and take and clarity more than anything. The first really is the non-competes. And that popped out of nowhere. I know in California, we got used to that at the beginning of this year, right? It was the beginning of this year when California had the non-competes, but Washington decided that they were going to jump in on the fun as well.
Right.
So I've seen on different threads and discussions with colleagues, different advices, different assumptions that people have made. And so I wanted to go to an expert, go to the source. And Ali, we know that you're keeping us up to date on all of these things. So I want to welcome you back. And even though you've got a 49ers football behind you, I still love you. I'm just kidding. They're my new adopted team.
I know they are. Yeah. No, most people don't know that your son is a huge 49er fan. So
Huge.
You have to adopt them at this point.
I did.
If you don't tell them about your son, they're going to think you're a fair weather fan, and then no one's going to respect you. So.
No, it's 49ers were my it was fun to give them a hard time when I was still a San Diego fan, but we got abandoned by our team, and so I needed to find a new one, and 49ers sucked me in.
That's funny. Well, thanks for inviting me back. Yeah, it's been a busy year when it comes to new laws, and Washington, federal government is getting involved in more of our businesses, and they're passing laws left and right, and the FTC is just the newest thing. So that they, that got into the game of passing this sort of sweeping non-compete, rule.
Right. So let's talk about what it is, what we need to be aware of for it, how it impacts the practices, and maybe some misconceptions, some things that you've heard, and possibly some things that we're not sure of yet, because once rules pass, sometimes it goes through a review committee, and the details have to get worked out.
Yeah. Well, I think what's important for everyone to know is just sort of the quick history of non-competes in our country, right? So non-compete clauses have two variations. Okay, there's actually three variations. Right, one is when you buy or sell a practice, the buyer can ask the seller not to compete against them for a period of time, right? Those are still valid, and this rule that we're going to talk about in a second has not impacted that at all across the country. Okay, so that's the very first thing I want everyone to know. If you're buying a practice, you can hold the seller to a non-compete because you're buying goodwill and things of that nature. And sellers, when you sign those asset purchase agreements and you sign those non-competes, you can't get out of them with this new rule. Okay, so that's the first. The second iteration of non-competes.
Before you get to the second, a question on the first. Are there still some parameters and guidelines that need to be reasonable on that first? I mean, I can't say.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
You can't practice anywhere in the state of California, right? It's
right. Yeah. No, it can't. Yeah, it can't be that. It has typically the mileage is 5 to 10 miles on the low end, 20 to 25 miles on the high end. Right. Now that can vary nationwide, but it's 5 to 10 minimum, 20 to 25 usually maximum, and the duration is usually 5 years. So so that's the first iteration. Okay. The second iteration is language that says that if you're working for me, you cannot work anywhere else while working for me. Okay, while you're working for me. And we won't go through those, Aaron, because those rules vary state by state. Mm-hmm. Okay, so every state has, potentially slightly different rules. Some states say, yeah, you can restrict someone from working elsewhere and moonlighting if they're working for you. Some states say, no, that's not allowed, because what if somebody's working 3 days a week? They should be able to work the remaining 4 days, of the week, whatever. So it's just kind of a little bit different. But again, this rule doesn't apply to that either. Okay. Got it. So the iteration that this new FTC rule applies to is post-employment non-competes, right? So what that means is that if you are a worker and you leave your employment or have been terminated, so it's post-employment, then you are prohibited, starting in September. Actually, it got published in the Federal Registry yesterday, May 7th. So that means that the final rule goes into effect September 4th of 2024. Okay, so September 4th of 2024. And what, so basically any agreement that has a non-compete with a worker is now prohibited beginning September 4th. And what that basically means is that across the country, if you have one of these non-compete clauses in your agreement, you can now go and compete with your employer. Okay. You can open up next door, upstairs, downstairs, really anywhere, right? And the reason the agency decided to do this is because basically what they realize is that every state had different rules, mm-hmm. and it was very inefficient for workers who worked, in high tech and these other businesses, because it just didn't make sense, if you had headquarters in one state, but then you worked in another state, which state's rules applied, how do they kind of manage all that? So they decided to kind of make it an even rule across the country. Now, some states like California have had this rule for decades, if you will. And so it doesn't impact people in California because it's always been in place, but other states it does.
Got it. Makes sense. So if I was in California, which I did this year because they weren't enforceable, but this year they made them, illegal. Yeah. So we rewrote all our associate agreements with your law firm's help, and easy, just sign new agreements. Gave us a chance to update some things in there too that we probably hadn't looked at and needed to update. But if I'm in a different state and currently have a non-compete, do I need to redo my employment agreements? Do I need to? Can I just say, well, that part's we're going to ignore?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Good question. So when the initial rule was proposed last year,
mhm.
uh, they had a requirement that all these contracts had to be rewritten, basically, like voided and then started over. But what ended up happening was that the final rule basically states that as an employer, you just have to notify the employee that that provision of your contract is no longer valid. Okay, is no longer valid.
Okay,
And the exact language of the rule basically says it's a very broad rule, but it says any term or condition um, of employment that prohibits a worker to or penalizes them in any sort of way, right? Prevents them or penalizes them from either seeking work, accepting work, you know, with a different entity, or operating a business is now unlawful.
got it.
Okay,
So
so that's where that's how the rule is written. So it does make it in line with some of the more strict states.
got it. Makes sense.
Yeah,
Now, a couple questions come to mind. So you said employer employee, and you did talk about a buyer selling out. What if I'm in a partnership and one of the partners decides to leave?
yeah.
We disagree with what color we're going to paint the office, and we dissolve the partnership. Does that rule still apply because they were an owner, or how are they
Yeah.
treated in that situation?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So you can still have non-competes with partners,
Okay.
because there's other considerations there because there's fiduciary duty obligations and things of that nature. But other than that, it applies to employees, independent contractors, externs, interns, volunteers, apprentices, sole proprietors. It basically applies to everyone else. And in the healthcare world, there's another exception too, which is for what they call senior executives, right? With
Hmm.
senior executives, but that rule really doesn't work, or it's not an exception for in the sort of the healthcare world because there's two requirements of the exception. One is that it has to meet a certain salary requirement, and that part is probably easily met. To be a quote unquote sort of senior executive because it's $151,000. So a lot of associates do make more than $151,000. But the second part of that exception is the problem, which is that they have to be in a policy making position, Aaron, right? So,
Yep.
and most associates are not in a policy making position, right?
Got it.
Because they're not the president, they're not the CEO, they're not some high level executive. They don't make policies, right? And so that's why associates wouldn't qualify.
Yep. And to be clear on a policy making position, it's not like I took an associate and say, hey, you're going to manage my dry eye clinic or you're going to manage my myopia managed clinic, but I have to approve anything that you're going to buy. I have to approve any changes,
Right.
right? They're not the ones that have full autonomy, if you will, over that area.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Now there's a couple of other exceptions too that we're trying to get more information about, but non-solicitation, non-disclosure agreements, if they're drafted very narrowly, are excluded from this. So you can't prevent somebody from working in the field, right? Like
Hmm.
in optometry, but
Yep.
If it's drafted carefully, those could be an exception. Um, there's well, we talked about some of the franchise. Well, I mean, it doesn't apply to healthcare again, but there's like exceptions for franchisees and franchisors. We talked about the sale of the business. So there's some exceptions there, but for the most part, you just have to know that it doesn't apply.
Got it.
If you've got non-competes for your associates, the likelihood is that it doesn't, it's not valid anymore.
Okay. So let me ask you this. So we have non-competes that are no longer valid, and, Dr. Johnny's going to go open up next door to me. The Are there still policies that we can have in place so that he doesn't market to our patient base? Right, he can go, but how does that work with the IP that we have, the records, patients? Like,
yeah,
so I
no,
think
it's a
that's the
good
big
question.
fear, right? I don't
It
want
is.
somebody to open next door and then move half the business over with him.
Yeah. It is. It is. It is. It is. Yeah. It is a concern. It is a concern. So, what we're teaching young ODs now is that it's really important for you to just know that it's still a HIPAA violation to download patient information and take, charts and data from practice management softwares out of the office, right? And so if someone is coming in and downloading all the patient data, right, their home addresses, telephone numbers, all of that, and their intent is to market to those people, right? That's a HIPAA violation and a violation of basically every optometry board in the country, right? And so if I'm an employer and I find out that someone's done that, right, there are certainly serious steps that can be taken to cause problems for that young person. So we're teaching everyone not to do that, right? We're saying, look, advertise. If you're going to open and compete, advertise. And fair game is fair game, but don't do something that's going to get you in trouble with the board or whatnot. And so you could have, what I would suggest is having stuff in your employment manual. Hopefully you guys are HR for Health customers, so it'll all be there. But I would say, have stuff in your employment manual, have things in your employment agreement as well with your associates that talk about the theft of intellectual property and things of that nature in a way that is valid and legit. And then if you need to, then you can go after the person, if they do anything. So
Got it. No, that makes sense. And I know whenever we speak to a lawyer, talk lawyer things, I immediately go to how do I prevent bad things from happening, right? How do I stop it, or how do I I'm on the defensive. Walk me through, because you work with so many optometry, dental, medical practices. How do I be proactive in using these changes? Maybe not in a, I don't know if you can use them in a positive way, but how do I make it not just all doom and gloom, right? How do I
yeah,
view these and say, hey, this could be a good thing? You know what I'm saying, what I'm asking.
Yeah, no, I do. And this is what's hard. I mean, a lot of people have been, sending messages and kind of talking about, well, isn't this going to be challenged in court? Yeah, in fact, it's already been challenged in court. There's a lawsuit that was filed in late April by someone in Texas. But there is so much feedback that the FTC got that even if they lose in court, the likelihood is that Congress is going to potentially at some point pass this law. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, if you have to hold your associate to a contract to not compete with you, um, you know, it's probably the wrong way of approaching that, right? The optometry space is such an interesting space right now because there's so much growth happening, right? In so many different ways. People are partnering up with med spas and and there's a lot more OD ophthalmology like partnerships happening than ever before. And I even have one. I don't know if I ever told you. It's actually become three now, but we OD dental offices kind of coming together, partnerships, and it was like husband and wife, but still, it's like, and now there's two more that are actually talking about doing it that aren't related. So there's a lot of interesting things happening, but I think as an owner, what I would say, if I have a really great OD that I'm worried about, I want to take and put into place strategies that hold and create a sense of urgency for this OD to not want to leave because I have such an awesome setup. And then And then if they really are rock stars and you really don't want to lose them, then it's okay to sell them a piece of the practice, right? Enter into a partnership, let them buy in, because it's you can create a scenario where the practice will be even more valuable
Mm-hmm.
after selling them the interest, because you're bringing on someone who's going to keep building the practice,
Yep.
right? And Aaron, I mean, you and I have shared stories like this all the time, but there's examples after examples after examples of associates coming in being ho hum associates, right? Like whatever. Suddenly they're an owner, and boom, they're producing like they've never produced before. They're having conversations like they've never had before. Sales, everything goes up. Like, just life is just better for the practice because now they're an owner and they've got a sort of a vested interest.
Oh, absolutely. Well, it's no different than I, I I treat a rental car differently than I treat my own car.
Yeah.
Right, one's mine, one's not, and so there's value in having a piece of the pie and being able to not build somebody else's dream, but build your own dream along with theirs. So
Absolutely.
no,
Yeah. Absolutely.
100% agree with that. And if you're in private practice, the goal of private practice is to be successful and then perpetuate the success
Yeah.
for the next generation. I'm 100% on board with helping people, either buy in, or I've seen quite a few successful practice owners, go in as a partner with a planned buyout or opt out of their
Yeah.
associates, so they can basically bankroll and then get the benefit of helping them as a mentor be successful, but then also financially be successful of that.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And if yeah, no, that's exactly right. If you're in your mid to late 40s, 50s for sure, and you've got associates and you have a great practice, I mean, yeah, this is the time to have these conversations. And it's funny, I speak to a lot of ODs every week, and a lot of them have these sublease agreements or whatnot, at these larger organizations. And as soon as they find an awesome practice to join, they're like, "How do I get rid of my sublease? Like, how do I want to join this private practice?" It's like, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's very cool. No, they want to enjoy the success that we have, and I will share from. I mean, it's an N of one in my office, but dad was fantastic and let me buy in, um, bought him out, and and had my associate after a year that she was fantastic. Let Brittany buy in, and every time we've done that, the practice has grown.
Yeah.
Every time I've let others have input uh, in healthy conversation ways, the practice has grown. And so I think that
Yeah.
that's how you build wealth. That's how you build success. That's how you take
That's
better
right.
care of patients and your teams across the board. Now, let me ask you on the opposite side, what do we do wrong, or what can we doing better when we find an associate that we know we probably aren't going to go down that path with? Right. And it's not that associate that's just happy to be the worker bee. It's the associate that we're like, I don't have this good feeling. They're not crazy enough to get rid of. But how long? I mean, do we hold on to those people too long? Do we not have the appropriate conversations? What do you typically see that is the catalyst that happens before things go bad?
Yeah, no, there's, it's funny because, with private equity kind of taking a bigger uh, role in optometry than ever before, they have brainwashed a lot of young ODs to think that they can't become practice owners.
Mm-hmm.
They've brainwashed them to think that the business of optometry is so hard, so difficult, that they should never own a practice, right? And so, unfortunately, as you know, it's been kind of my mission to travel the country, teach young ODs that yes, you can do it. You can
Yeah.
save optometry. You can be independent. You can, kill it and be okay. Don't be scared. But that mentality, we can't reach everyone, right? So there are some folks who just want to work, and they don't want to ever own a practice. And they are very valuable pieces of this pie, Aaron, because you don't have to own a practice if you really don't want to. But it doesn't mean that you're lost in space, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
you have to be the best associate you can be. And as a practice owner, if I have one of these associates, what I want to do is I want to build them up.
Yep.
Right? I want to teach them about all the latest technology. I want to teach them, if they show any affinity for myopia, I want to talk to them about that. If it's dry eyes, I want to teach them about that. I want them to go to, events and, conferences and learn because they're, intellectually curious, hopefully.
Yeah.
And then they can bring that back and they can talk to patients about dry eye and myopia and all this and still build the business even though they don't own it, right?
Right.
And but they can get a share, right? Like if you've never had a myopia specific kind of office or techniques or strategies, you could set all that up and have that consulting and that strategy there and let them kind of run with it, and when the revenue comes in from that, they get a piece of it, right? Or whatnot. Yep. And there's so much that you can do, right? There's so much that you can do. And so I would just kind of build those people up to become more empowered to be great technicians,
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yep. I think that's important, right? We invest in our spaces. We certainly invest in our technology. And what's the thinking on it for myself, I got to go back and look, but what's my line item for investment in my people? And to make sure that asset is able to produce it at the highest levels.
Yeah.
So, no, makes perfect sense. So, summing up the FTC ruling on non-competes, right? It pretty much is for associate agreements, like you talked about. That they're not enforceable anymore, not valid anymore. You said that the rule says we need to communicate to them that portion of their agreement is needs to be notified that it's not in play. What's the best way to do that?
I think anything in writing, an email, a letter, where you keep proof of it. I think an email is probably fine. I would avoid things like text messages and things of that nature, right? Just make it a little bit more formal. For those of you that are very rule followers, if you want to wait to do that until September to see what happens with some of these cases that are being filed, you can do that. The law doesn't go into effect until September 4th, as I mentioned. So it's not like somebody can leave tomorrow and start competing with you if you're in a state that allows it, and you've got a valid contract. It's funny. I saw a contract yesterday. Actually, the young associate sent it to me, and it said that they could not practice optometry in the entire state of Florida for 5 years. And I'm like,
yes,
I mean, look, Florida's very, very, red state, when it comes to like employment laws. But I was like, even that is not going to work. Like you can go compete. Don't worry about it. You don't have to worry about the FTC rules. So my point is, like, if you want to wait until September 4th ish to send the email, great. You can do that. But just know that at some point, one way or another, these laws are going to be upheld, or Congress is going to file it, and then they won't be able to be challenged by any courts, and anybody. So we'll see what happens, but this is coming down the pipe for sure.
Yep, that makes sense. And the nice thing about Washington in business is they give us a lot of leeway to implement things, right? So now's the time to start having conversations. If there's a situation you're concerned about, I would strongly recommend you have it with someone like Ali, who knows the law.
Thank you.
I love my colleagues, but sometimes we go off of what we perceive as right, and even if our perception of right is right, it might not be legal.
Yeah,
or it might violate it. So just make sure that you're getting advice from the right people, because I think that's critically important. You would, look, we don't tell patients to go Google eye symptoms or go to the Walmart and the eye drop aisle and pick their favorite color to try to treat whatever it's got going on. Go to the professionals.
Right.
So a colleague, same.
Yeah, that's a perfect point. That's a perfect point. And if anybody needs a new employment agreement because yours is old, just get in touch with me. If you have any questions about any of this, or if you want to sell a piece of your practice to an associate and make them a partner where non-competes can be valid, let me know. There's a whole strategy behind doing that well. So I'd be happy to chat. So.
Yep. It's a big strategy. In fact, I had Mick on talking about transitions.
Oh, cool.
Not long ago, because I know you and Mick and Dale through Vision Source put on the how to prepare to buy, prepare to sell course, which is fantastic. And it's not as simple. I shouldn't say that. I think there's things that are in play that we just don't think about and consider. And so understanding the rules of that game just help for a much more positive atmosphere. So if I'll link the registration link in the show notes to this too, but it's not if you're selling not only applicable if you're selling your whole practice or buying the whole practice, but if you're buying in. Right?
Yeah, and it's open to all Vision Source and non-Vision Source doctors.
Yeah, and non-Vision Source.
So come on in. It's a great seminar, lots of positive feedback, and again, like you said, you don't know what you don't know. So the idea is to learn during these couple days in a really safe environment where you can ask your questions and do that. If you can bring in the person that you are buying or selling to or want to partner with, that's even better. And then we can have like really awesome conversations and some good drinks.
And some good drinks, yes. Yeah, if you go Thursday.
Coming up, what are the dates again, Aaron? What are the dates?
You're going to ask me a question I don't have off the top of my head. It's May. I got it right here. May 20th through 21st. So pretty quick. So I will have that link in the notes, and we'll do it again later in the year. And we'll share that. But information trumps fear. Yeah. And so I think that it's important to just have all the information again from the people who were involved in this, right? A lawyer like Ali, who's involved in the buy sells, a banker like Dale, who is the one who's approving the loans. So it doesn't matter what you think or your friend thinks they can get. It's a matter of what the banker says he's willing to give you. So knowing all those pieces of the pie, but fantastic course. If you've got just a few more minutes, Ali wanted to ask you one other question that's come across. It is the I lost my notes here. It is the Corporate Transparency Act.
Yeah.
Right. And so what do we need to know? Is this a big scary government monster? Is this something that's pretty simple? What do we just need to be aware of for the Corporate Transparency Act?
Yeah. The Corporate Transparency Act is really an annoying requirement that they have put on everyone, especially small business. I mean, the goal of the Corporate Transparency Act was to make sure that the Russians and Chinese and North Koreans are not owning American companies unlawfully and whatnot. And so what they've done is they've put this rule in place where you have to file this this report notifying the federal government if you own a corporation, LLC, whatnot, of your name, your date of birth, your address, and a couple of other sensitive pieces of information, like driver's license, passport numbers, things of that nature. And then it's a one-time filing, which is good. It's not annual. But then you have to refile it and update it if any information changes. If any information changes at all, right? Like you move your office, you have to notify them. If you change your phone number or this or that, and the penalties are like crazy if you don't. I mean, it is crazy. It's like $600, I think, or $590 something per day, and then it's like a $10,000 fine. And then 2 years in prison. I mean, it's like they're going like way, way over the top. So it's not hard to do this filing. It's actually pretty simple and secure. But a lot of people are asking us to do it for them because it's a federal government document, so it's like not super clear, and they don't want to make a mistake because of all the penalties I just mentioned. So we're doing it, for a lot of people. So if you have any trouble with it or you want just a professional to do it, we're happy to do it. It's not a problem. If you have an existing company that was set up prior to January 1, 2024, prior, you have until December 31st, on or before December 31st of 2024 to file this thing. So you have some time, but although we're recommending don't wait until the end. Yep. If you have a new entity that you set up in 2024, right? So any new corporation or whatnot that you set up, you must do it within 90 days. Okay. And so we are doing that for a lot of our clients, as just part of like what we do to set them up. So, so it's like I said, it's not hard to do. It can look and feel a little bit complicated. And so, if you have any questions, please, just contact us. We'll do it for you. Your CPAs have been advised because of the penalties or whatnot not to do it. So most CPAs have been advised by their, governing boards not to do it. So, we as an OD specific law firm are doing it. And so it's just important to know that. So just don't forget it. Do it as soon as you can. That way you can put it behind you. And then you're done. And I don't know how much we charge for it, but it's very little. It's like a few $100. So
got it. And this is for any size
yep.
corporate entity, right? So an LLC of one or a multi-million-dollar corporation, just your corporation right, exactly. Or an LLC. Yep.
Exactly. If you're like a partnership, right, of corporations, as an example, you should, the corporation should file, right. So basically, like any entity, an LLC, corporation, should file that. Basically any entity that you file with the state, mm-hmm. Secretary of State, should file one of these things.
Got it.
So it's like sole proprietors, you don't have to, but like everybody else, basically.
Anything else. So
cool.
Yay. Something fun to do. But thanks for the clarity on that. Definitely thank you for the clarity on the non-compete. And I'm sure as things progress, if they do, and we need some more clarity, we know where to come back to. We always appreciate
I'm always here.
Navigate these fun things.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'm always here. So guys, don't hesitate to ask questions. That's what we do. So.
Awesome. Well, Ali, I appreciate it. Thank you very much for making time to share your knowledge with us. And until next time.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Aaron.